Okay, sweet. All right. Sorry about that, y'all. We were having a little bit of technical difficulties. But welcome. Thank you for joining me on your Monday evening. My name is Julian Camera, and I'm the field organizer at the ACLU of Colorado. My pronouns are he, him, his. And tonight we're going to be talking about policy and advocacy and the 101, the basics of the legislative branch of government, how a bill becomes law, and how you can get involved and influence policy when it's being made at the Capitol. And so if you don't mind just dropping in the chat your name, your pronouns, what city or town you're joining us from, and then one issue that's on your mind tonight, one issue that keeps you up at night or something you care a lot about. And then we'll jump in. It looks like we have someone with their hand raised. Oh, chat is disabled. Good flag. Cass, do you mind? Thank you for flagging that for us. Cass, do you mind?
Yes.
Cool.
On it one.
Cass will get on that 1 second. In the meantime, I'll tell you a little bit a personal story. So as a trans person, I was pretty young when I began to realize that there's a huge difference in power and privilege and access to power for some people. And that's no more true than when it comes to our state capitol. I remember a few years ago, an organization I was following, they did a call to action, and it was to come testify in the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee against a bill that would ban gender affirming care for trans youth. And this was an issue that was very personal to me because had I had access to that care and that education as a young person, it would have saved me a lot of hardship. It would have saved me a lot of years of depression and not being able to express myself fully. And so I had no idea what the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee was, but I knew that I wanted to go to the Capitol. I wanted to join this organization, and I wanted to yell at legislators and tell them how terrible this bill was. So I showed up, and I waited hours to testify. Me and the group I was with, we waited hours. There were so many people there, folks that were for the bill and folks that were opposing the bill. We were there to oppose it. And when I finally got called to testify, I'm sitting at this desk in front of a few, I think it was like 7 committee members, and I'm shaking, I'm nervous. And then I got to look the legislator in the eyes, the one who created the bill, and just tear him a new one in the most professional way and explain to him why this issue mattered to me. And so once, of course, this was at 10:30 at night, the bill ended up being shut down, or the bill got shut down at 1 a.m. and a lot of the other queer and trans people there, we just looked at each other first a sigh of relief, of course, because this bill was horrible, and then we just looked at each other we belong here, and these bad, terrible, hateful policies do not. And so that was a moment for me where I realized that access to power, where these laws are made, I actually do have that access. It's the education piece that's missing. And so today, what we hope to get out of this training is that you walk away a bit more familiar, more comfortable, more confident in how new laws are made on a state level and how you can get involved. And even though we as constituents and residents of Colorado, we're the true deciders of what laws are created at the Capitol and who creates them, there's a huge gap in the education and how we access that power. So throughout this training, we're going to talk about ACLU's priority issue areas and what you can expect to see in our current and future policy efforts. We'll talk about the legislative branch of government. We'll break down how that operates. And then we're going to spend most of our time talking about how a bill becomes law. And then we're also going to have a call to action to do at the end, where you can use some of the things we're talking about today and use those tools to ask legislators to support an issue that you hopefully care about. I'm seeing some stuff in the chat. Thank you, everyone. I love seeing it. We're seeing folks from all over. Yes, we want to talk about housing. We want to talk about Black liberation and abolition. We care about women's rights and abortion rights and criminal legal reform. Awesome. Higher education. Cool. Love it. Thank you all so much for participating in that. And thanks for joining. Indigenous rights. Love it. Cool. Environmental equity, homelessness rights, immigrants' rights. Awesome. Okay, so let's jump in. Let's see. So in 2021, ACLU, we did a year-long listening tour where we met with communities throughout Colorado, and we talked to them face to face, just asking them, what issues impact you and your community members, and what do you all want to see change? And this informed our strategic planning, where we identified 3 strategic imperatives for which were going to be the lens for which we do all of our work. Any issues, any campaigns that we're going to focus on, they're going to come through the lens of racial justice, indigenous justice, and immigrant justice. The 3 primary issue umbrellas that we're going to be working on are systemic equality, and that's going to focus on repairing the harms of systemic racism when it comes to housing, economic justice, and access to voting. Our campaign for smart justice, and that is going to focus on alternatives to policing, prosecutions, and prisons that address the root causes of harm to Black and Brown communities versus punitive actions. Privacy and Liberty Project, that talks about we're going to be focused on protections against government overreach and threats from advancing technology. So let's break it down. Let's hop into the policy piece. There are 3 primary branches of government. And today we're talking about state government, not federal, but this concept also applies to on the federal level. So the judicial branch, that's going to be comprised of our district, county courts, and then the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. And their main purpose is to evaluate laws. The legislative branch, which includes our state senators and our state representatives, their main purpose is to make laws. And then our executive branch, that includes the governor. On a federal level, it'd be the president, and their main purpose is to carry out those laws. The Colorado legislative branch, on the left here, you'll see our Senate district map, and on the right is the House district map. In the Senate district map, we have 35 senators who are elected, and we have, which right now we have 23 Democrats and 12 Republicans. On the House of Representatives side, we have 65 House districts. It says Senate, but that's wrong. It's 65 House districts. And it's 46 Democrats and 23 Republicans. As you can see, as you get closer to the Denver metro area, the districts become smaller. And as you get further away, the districts are larger. So you might live in Durango and have the same senator or representative that they might have in like Grand Junction. So it's really important to participate in elections, no matter where you are. But it's wild to see that one person could be representing, 1 to 2 people could be representing like such large areas. Also, because we have a Democratic governor, we have what's called a trifecta, and a trifecta is where one party has the majority of power, and basically it doesn't mean that they can do whatever they want, but basically as it stands right now, the Democratic Party could pass policies and laws that align with the Democratic Party fairly easily. But legislators currently are working really hard to work hand in hand with folks on the other side of the aisle and be more bipartisan. So that's just a little cool fact about Denver, or about Colorado right now. And then we're going to hop to the next slide. So leadership and elections. So the legislative branch meets every year between January and May at the Capitol in Denver. And you might think you might not know that, because most people think of elections like every 2 years, every 4 years, but legislators meet every year, and it's complete chaos. and it goes really fast, and there's a lot happening. Hundreds of bills are decided on and introduced and made and also shut down. And so it's a really fascinating thing that happens every year right in our backyard. For leadership and speakers, the legislature, they elect chamber speakers, leaders, and they assign representatives to committees, and they're responsible for the day-to-day operations of the House and the Senate. On the right here, you can see our current Senate and House leadership representatives. For elections, the Senate has elections every 4 years. The House has elections every 2 years. And elections are based on what district they live in. And then, of course, the most important part of the legislative branch is the people, us, the folks who belong to different communities, the non-governmental organizations like schools, service providers, churches, businesses. We elect legislators, and we are the ones who influence the policies that they prioritize at the Capitol. So we do this by voting, by knocking on doors, by calling voters, by posting on social media, by having conversations with our friends and families about why elective candidate is so great, and then hundreds of other ways to support a candidate's potential win. We also keep them accountable, and we do this by staying involved, by paying attention to their votes and their actions and the issues that are happening in our communities. We send them friendly reminders of their promises. You know, if a candidate ran on pro-housing, being a pro-housing champion, and then they are not living true to that throughout their term, we're gonna either choose not to re-elect them, or we're going to have meetings with them and we're going to remind them like, hey, these were your promises and this is what this community cares about. So we need you to either uphold that, or we're going to elect someone new next term. And, you know, a lot of people talk about voting, vote. I'm sure a lot of us on the call vote, but the truth is, like, people who have access to power vote. And that's why they put hundreds of millions of dollars into elections. That's why they put hundreds of millions of dollars into voter suppression tactics. So that's why when they say like everyone should vote, that is what we mean. They wouldn't care so much. When we show up and we vote, we win. And so that's just another reason why we really focus on voting at ACLU and voting rights. It's part of how we live true to democracy. And finally, we influence laws. We do this through community organizing, where we talk about what issues we're facing and what needs to happen. We do this through writing letters to elected officials. We do this through lobbying, which we're going to talk a little bit more about. We do this by testifying in support or opposition of a bill, and plus hundreds of other ways to influence laws. And it really depends on what works for you on a personal level. Some people are going to go to the Capitol and they're going to testify. Others are going to be like, doing fundraisers in their communities or hosting events at their house where they're writing postcards to elected officials. There's just so many different ways, and it's great to get creative about how you're involved in the policymaking process every year. So we're going to do a quick video. I hope I'm able to share my sound. No, I'll be able to share my sound. Let me just make sure. Cool. All right, we're going to do a quick video about how a bill becomes law. Let me know if you can't see it, Cass.
Yeah, we can see it.
Climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that's.
Julian, we can see it.
You can't?
No.
Okay. You just see me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see.
We can hear your sound.
Okay.
We just can't see it.
Okay. No, I'll start over. Thank you. Cool. That should do it.
You sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long week while I'm sitting in committee, but I know I'll be a law someday. I hope and pray that I will, but today I am still just a bill.
Well, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. The folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." And he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me feel. And pray that they will, but today I am still just a bill.
So those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die.
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm going to now. I go to the representatives and the whole
Yes, what happened?
thing. I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, the 1,000 with the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be I hope and pray that he will. But today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. The president vetoes me. I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again. And by that time, you're so.
By that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill. He signed your bill. Now you're alone.
Okay, cool. So thanks for watching that. That's classic School of Rock, how a bill becomes a law. It's more for folks who are visual learners. And that was also talking about the federal level. Again, it's very similar, but different. So just the basics to pull away from that. There's like a few primary phases. There's a lot of things that happen from start to finish with a bill, but we have the planning. That's where a lot of the pre-work happens. So actually most of the work happens before the bill's even introduced. And then we have the introduction. The bill's introduced in the House or the Senate. It's sent to a committee and faces possible amendments. And then it's goes through a few other votes. And then once it's passed, it'll go to the governor to be signed. But then the work still isn't over. And you have to work on educating and implementing the new law. And we're gonna jump in and break down how that might show up, like opportunities to get involved as an activist and advocate in each of these phases. So let's hop to the next one. So for bill introduction, when a bill is first introduced, it'll be introduced either in the House or the Senate. And for the sake of this training, we're just going to say it's introduced in the House. The House Speaker will determine the committee that it goes to. And depending on the strategy, this is a great opportunity to educate the public about the bill. And I say depending on the strategy because some legislators might want to keep the bill on the down low and not bring too much attention to it. So ways to get involved at this point, you can join the bill launch. Some bills will have a press conference and you can join. You can post on social media and talk about how awesome it is. You could talk to your friends and family about it. You can also write your legislator, get it on their radar, let them know this is something I care about. This is something my community cares about. And then, of course, you could tell the legislative champions you appreciate them. legislative champions are the folks who are going to be running the bill and seeing it through, and it's going to be a long process for them. So giving them a little support, a little reminder of why it's worth it is always a great thing to do throughout the process. So the bill then goes to a committee, and committees are small bipartisan groups of legislators. So it consists typically of some Democrats, some Republicans, and these are folks who tend to have more expertise in a certain area. And the committees, they focus on certain parts of the bill, and they might amend or add things to the bill. So ways that you can participate at this point, this is a really critical piece of the process. If you're just kind of acting solo, or you're acting as with your classmates, you can do a lay of the land of the committee. Basically find out who's in the committee, what they care about, how they vote, and how you can appeal to them. You can show up to the committee and testify and share a powerful personal story, and look legislators in their eyes, because legislators are going to get tons of phone calls, tons of emails, which are extremely important, but testifying adds a new level of personable energy to it. And so it's really important to include that component as well, if that's something that you feel like you're good at. Letters and phone calls to committee members, lobbying, which funny enough, there's a lobby day coming up on Thursday. If you want to join with ACLU, Thursday the 9th at 8 a.m. We're going to meet up. Please join us. You can do letters to the editor, post on social media, and try and get news coverage. This is a great way to educate the public and get other folks to also testify, or also make calls, or also make emails. Numbers speak, and if a legislator or a committee member is seeing a ton of they're getting a ton of intake about a certain bill, they're going to be paying attention. So then after it goes through the committee, it goes back to the House, and the House 65 representatives, they're going to vote on any new changes to the bill, and then they're going to send it to the Senate. So at this point, it's important for legislators and lobbyists and organizations, whoever's running the bill, to know how many votes they have, because you want to make sure that you have a majority to get it through the House to go to the Senate. In the Senate, the bill is going to face a very similar cycle, and more amendments can take place. So during this cycle, same thing. It's great to call your legislators. This is going to be different than, or it could be different than when it's in committee, because when it's in committee, it's a handful of legislators who might not represent your district, but they still want to hear from you because they're representing that committee. But when when it's going to a larger House or the Senate, this is a great time to contact your legislator who lives in your district. You could testify in the Senate committee hearing. You can make sure to advocate for or against any amendments that might take place. And you can also write the governor. This is a great thing to do as well, because the governor is paying attention to the bills that are moving through the legislature throughout session, and he, she, or they might make recommendations to amend or change a bill. And if that's the case, like, it's important for you to remind the governor, hey, this is an issue that really impacts my community, and it's important that this piece of the bill does not change. So once the bill has passed the Senate, it goes back to the House, where they vote for a final time on all the changes, and they approve it, and then it's sent to the governor's desk, and the governor has 30 days to sign or veto the bill. Vetoes are not common, but they do take place. So again, that's why it's important to also make sure you're connecting with the governor and letting them know about what issues you care about. But again, the work is not over at this point. It's first of all great to thank the legislative champions, the ones who went through all the work to push the bill through inside the chambers. You can help implement the new law by creating fact sheets, posting on social media, getting involved and doing know your rights trainings. You can help hold institutions and elected officials accountable to the new law. You can host events or participate in events that talk about the new law, and just get involved in just the widespread public education to make sure folks know. And I know this is backwards, but we're not going to dive too deep into this. Planning and creating a bill, that is where a lot of the lay of the land happens, a lot of the work. And it starts with identifying the problem. What's the problem? And is legislation the answer? You might not know the answer to this until you have your stakeholders, which are your group decision makers. And that's where you build your team. Who are my people? Who are the most impacted? What legislators care about this issue? And then do another lay of the land, similar to what you would do like with the Senate or House committees, is finding out like, is the bill bipartisan? What issues do the legislators care about? How many legislators are likely to support or oppose it? Where does the governor stand on the issue? What do the most impacted communities say about it? And what do they want? And are they involved? How much will it cost? Legislators are going to always want to know that. Create it, and then you want to create a strategy and talk about what's the pathway to victory? How are we going to get there? What resources is this going to require? So we're going to do a quick activity. Just ask you to drop in the chat your answers. There's no wrong answers here. This is all personal preference. Like as organizers, as advocates, we all have different skills that suit us best. And so I just want to hear from y'all in these different scenarios. What would you do? What do you think would work? And so a new law just passed, and it's going to prevent landlords from evicting tenants without just cause. This is an actual bill that's taking place this session. The problem is renters don't know that the law exists. How would you educate the public in your community? Again, personal preference. Flyers to doors, nice. Flyers, social media, yes. Oh wait, they're flooding in information sessions where community members gather. Yes. I would mail to create an email blast that's easy to send to your targeted party, and use social media to gain attention. Yeah, social media is good these days. Go to door to door with fact sheet flyers. Yes, Shireen. Hi, Shireen. Social media, especially Nextdoor app. Yes, I love that. Community convos and meetings, social media surveys, and the news. Yes, all encompassing. Shared social media boards. Awesome. Word of mouth. That's it, Brittany. It's the one. Have it as a pop-up notification when you go to HUD website or such. Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to require that the government is doing their part of educating on this. And sometimes it's just like we're, as organizers, as advocates, we're taking this in our own hands and making sure our communities know about it. Phone call blast. I love all these. These are great. Flyers, social media, Twitter, Facebook. Yes. Super powerful to use social media. Newspapers. Yes. That's awesome. I think we're going to get the community educated at this point. Next prompt is community members elected a legislator who promised that they would be a champion of civil rights and civil liberties, especially around criminal legal reform, but they just voted to refelonize fentanyl. How would you hold them accountable? And this also happened. Letter to the editor, yes. Educate my community through canvassing, email blast, contact local newspapers, email blast them from their community, possible recall, letter to the editor. I am still mad about this. Me too. Yes. Protest. Yes, protest work. Absolutely. Cool. Well, some more answers are coming in. Um, a dope law to repeal the 1981 rent control ban is heading to the House Transportation, Housing and Local Government Committee, where there are 2 champions, but the other 11 are undetermined. What would you do? Call the undetermined. Yes. Send letters. Grassroots lobbying. Love it. Get people to the committee and to show outrage. Same thing as I said earlier as well. Send letters. Yes. Canvas. Support champions. Educate. Figure out everything I can about the undetermined folks to see what their interests are so can tailor the message to them. Yes, that's great, Lindsay, because a lot of times legislators, like, they'll just, they get a lot of emails, they get a lot of phone calls, but when someone's like hitting that spot, the thing that they care about, like if someone is like former educator and someone's talking to them about education and how this impacts education, they're going to be paying attention. So it's really important, and it's super easy to find how a legislator has voted on previous issues. A lot of people do scorecards, and so you can see how a legislator scored depending on what organization made the scorecard, but you can also just like look, how did this legislator vote on this issue, or what committee are they in, or what is their history. They'll put it on their websites too. They'll say like, I'm a former educator, I'm a former nurse. And so that gives you a little like peek into like how we can kind of hit those talking points that matter to them. Power mapping around the undetermined. Yes, power mapping is such a powerful tool that we all have access to with Google, and just like being able to access information about legislators. And that's something that we'll be doing down the line, is some power mapping trainings. We got an anti-abortion ordinance indefinitely tabled here in Pueblo by using all of these tactics. That's awesome, Sydney. That is so dope. Was that recent? I feel like I heard about that recently. Cool. Yeah, December. Yes. Okay, I did hear about that. Yeah, that's wild. Good job. Yeah, in December. Well, thankfully. And I know Pueblo is like, can be hard to organize in. So great job. That's awesome. So we have an actual call to action. Yeah, I know. Sometimes we need breaks from the news. It's real. I do take breaks every now and then. So our call to action, there's a bill that it was introduced the 31st, so a couple days ago. And it's Senate Bill 23-109. It was introduced in the Senate, and basically the bill is going to make it a class 1 felony to if you distribute, sell, give drugs to someone who takes them and then passes away. So we are strongly opposing this bill because we know that increasing penalties is not the answer, and instead focusing on evidence-based solutions and root causes to mental health and substance use is proven to make communities and individuals safer and healthier. So we are opposing this bill. We're asking legislators not to go backwards in our efforts to break away from the cycle of mass incarceration, and instead move towards addressing root causes. So we're going to drop in the chat a email template you can use just as some talking points, and some Senate Judiciary Committee members. But we're gonna and also the link to the Senate Judiciary Committee members. But what we're asking is that you write the Senate Judiciary Committee as a whole, so you can copy all of their email addresses, paste them all into one email, and then ask them to vote no on SB 23-109. I don't know the exact date of the hearing, but we know that it's going to be coming up, and we know that we want to ask folks to vote no. So Leslie just posted in the chat the template and it's a Google document. If you have any trouble accessing it, let us know. But you can copy and paste that. You can also add whatever makes sense to you. Those are just some like basic talking points. You can add why it's a personal issue to you or what you've noticed in your own communities, like in Pueblo or wherever you might be, and just encourage the Senate Judiciary Committee to vote no. If this is an issue that you really care about and you want to stay involved, let me know, because we can let you know when it's coming up, when it's going to be voted by the Senate or when it's going to be voted by the House, and any other calls to action that might be coming up on this issue. And while y'all are doing that, we're going to go ahead and close out and just see if anyone has any questions. And you can drop them in the Q&A box. We also are going to be having a few more events coming up this week. I really encourage folks to join our Wednesday session. It's going to be about how to give your story power. So if you have a personal story, we have really awesome trainers who are going to tell you how to make that, like, turn it into a story that will be, oh, perfect. And I just dropped in the chat how to track the progress of that bill. But Wednesday, we're going to talk about storytelling, and then Thursday, we're going to be doing our lobbying is for the people. And tomorrow night, Sophia is going to be doing a wonderful training on Advocacy 101. And so highly encourage you to join that awesome training. But yeah, any questions, comments, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're also going to drop in the chat a survey for you to let us know how this training was and what we can improve on and what worked. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining tonight. I'm not getting any questions. I'm going to hang on for a minute, but we really appreciate you joining us on your Monday evening, and we hope to see you throughout the week. Okay, wait, we got a question. This is the main bill we're working towards, but there. Yes, Caitlin, I see your question about, are there other bills we are lobbying for or against? Yes, there are, and we're going to be talking more about those on Thursday at our lobby day. But Anaya, are you available and want to give a lowdown on the bills that that we're going to be prioritizing?
Yeah, happy to. There are a lot of session, but a lot is focused in our smart justice issue area, and a lot of defense in that space. But some of the things that we're also looking to support are making sure that the bill that requires law enforcement to not use deceptive tactics in interrogation of youth gets through. So essentially not allowing the police to lie to kids to coerce confessions for things that kids may or may not have done. Another is to change the age of allowable prosecution in Colorado for youth as well. So right now you can handcuff, book, fingerprint, prosecute a 10-year-old in the state of Colorado. We are looking to move that age to 13 so that 10, 11, and 12-year-olds get connected to the services they need when they are exhibiting oftentimes behavior of a child, instead of being able to prosecute and send them to detention, and essentially build in a cycle of basically moving in and out of the criminal justice system for the rest of their lives at that point, which is what data has proven to show us. In our systemic equality issue area, we are looking at the rent control ban repeal that Julian mentioned earlier, trying to make it legal again in Colorado for municipalities to be able to put some restrictions around increased rent and price gouging through rent so that people are able to maintain their housing. Also looking at other renters protections like just cause evictions, some non-financial discrimination to make it more accessible to get into housing in the first place. And then also working to make sure that any land use policy that moves forward has a very specific and intentional focus on increasing development of affordable housing, not just housing in general, and making sure that comes with a lot of anti-displacement measures and requirements as well, so that folks who live in their communities get to stay in their communities regardless of the development around them. And then we are also working on what will be a late bill in our privacy and liberty issue area around biometric data privacy, to make sure that when companies are collecting your fingerprints, your facial mapping, your DNA, that you know exactly what they're doing with that data. You've consented to them holding that data, and you know that they aren't allowed to sell it. So just making sure we have better protections as individuals around the most personal information about ourselves that is completely unchangeable. And working on like 75 million other things. But it's going to be a fun session.
Yeah. So thank you, Anaya. As I mentioned, Anaya is not busy at all this session. Anaya is our senior policy strategist and is incredible and is just diving into all the chaos at the Capitol and doing an incredible job. So we appreciate him. If you want to send him a little thank you note, feel free to do that. But yeah, thank you all for joining, and please join us throughout the rest of the week, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.